Welcome again to Dulled History. Tonight we are not traveling to marble halls or moonlit battlefields. We are going somewhere quieter, colder, and far more real. A small, leaning farmhouse somewhere on the dusty edge of the Oklahoma Panhandle, or perhaps the red clay hills of northern Mississippi, or the wind-scoured plains of Kansas. It is the winter of 1933, the absolute rock bottom of the Great Depression, and you are about to wake up poorer than you have ever imagined possible. Close your eyes. Let the modern world slip away. Let the glow of your phone fade, the hum of the refrigerator vanish, the soft weight of your comforter dissolve. Feel instead the thin, scratchy quilt that barely reaches your shoulders. Feel the chill that lives inside the room like an unwanted guest who arrived in October and has refused to leave. The air tastes of coal oil, wood smoke, and something faintly of yesterday's boiled cabbage. Somewhere a loose shingle taps against the roof in the wind, a slow, patient heartbeat counting down the hours until morning. You are the second oldest of 6 children, though you feel 40 instead of 14. Your name is not important. Almost no one here has the luxury of being important. The mattress beneath you is a flour sack stuffed with corn shucks that have long since turned to dust. Every time you shift, the shucks rustle like dry leaves, and a puff of chaff rises into your nose. Your little brother is curled against your back, his feet ice-cold even through 2 pairs of socks with the heels worn out. Your mother sleeps closest to the stove, because someone has to be ready to feed it during the night, and your father is already gone. He slipped out at 3 to walk the 7 miles to the railroad tracks in hopes a freight might slow enough for him to toss on a few sacks of coal slack. You open your eyes in the dark. There is no electricity here. The nearest power line is 20 miles away and belongs to people who still have money. The only light is the dull red line around the stove lids where the last embers breathe. That faint glow is enough to show you the newspaper your mother pasted over the knotholes last fall. The headlines are from September. Hoover says prosperity is just around the corner. You have read that sentence so many times the ink has worn off in places. Prosperity never turned the corner into your yard. Your breath fogs in front of your face. You listen. The house makes its usual winter noises. The tin roof ticking as it contracts, the wind whining through a crack near the door, the soft shift of the sleeping bobbies in their shared apple crate cradle. You ease one arm out from under the quilt and the cold bites instantly. Your fingers find the edge of the iron bedstead and you pull yourself upright, careful not to wake the others. The floorboards are colder than the air. Splinters wait for bare feet like patient traps. You know exactly which boards creak and which ones don't. You have memorized the path from bed to stove the way a blind person learns a room. The stove is a squat, black Majesty No. 8 with one cracked lid and a missing damper handle. Your mother has tied a length of baling wire to it so you can still turn it with pliers. You kneel, knees popping, and open the door. Inside are 3 gray coals the size of hickory nuts. They glow like tired eyes. You take the lid lifter, an old butcher knife with the tip broken off, and gently place 3 corncobs on the coals. Then a twist of newspaper, then one precious stick of oak kindling no longer than your forearm. You blow softly through the front draft until the paper catches and the cobs begin to snap. The sudden bloom of heat on your face feels like a miracle and scolding at the same time. While the fire catches, you move to the water bucket. A skin of ice half an inch thick has formed overnight. You punch through it with the dipper and the sound is sharp in the silence. Cold water sloshes over your wrist and you flinch, but you fill the granite coffee pot anyway. There is no coffee, of course. You will boil water with a pinch of yesterday's grounds strained through a rag 3 times already, but the ritual matters. Ritual is one of the few things the bank cannot repossess. Behind you the bed springs creak. Your mother sits up without a sound. She is wearing her coat to bed again, and the stocking cap your grandmother knitted before she died of the grip in 29. She doesn't speak yet. Words cost warmth. She simply nods at the stove, approving your work, and moves to the crate that serves as pantry. Inside are the week's rations, counted and recounted. 3 pounds of pinto beans in a lard bucket, 1 small cloth poke of cornmeal, a fist-sized piece of salt pork wrapped in wax paper turning gray at the edges, half a cup of sorghum molasses in a fruit jar, and 4 potatoes beginning to sprout eyes like tiny, desperate fingers. She lifts the salt pork, sniffs it, decides it can last 2 more days if they are careful. You watch her face in the growing firelight. There are new lines around her mouth that were not there last year. She sets the pork back and reaches instead for the bean bucket. Tonight will be bean night again. Tomorrow will be bean morning. From the corner, your 4-year-old sister begins to cough. the dry barking sound that never quite goes away in winter. Mother crosses the room in 3 silent steps and lifts the baby into her arms, pressing the child's face into the crook of her neck for warmth. The coughing eases. No one mentions doctors. The nearest one is 30 miles away and charges $2 just to step out of his Ford. Your older brother appears beside you, barefoot despite the cold, carrying the slop bucket. He will feed the 2 remaining pigs before dawn in hopes they will make weight by spring. He doesn't speak either. He just touches your shoulder once, the smallest acknowledgement that you are both awake and both necessary. Then he is gone into the dark, the door closing with a soft complaint of hinges that have not seen oil since Harding was president. You turn back to the stove. The corn cobs have burned down to glowing red lace. You add 2 small pieces of coal slack your father brought home last week, stolen from the railroad right-of-way at risk of arrest. The new fuel hisses, then settles. You close the door and adjust the damper wire until the draft sings just right. The room begins very slowly to remember what warmth feels like. Mother sets a pot of beans on to soak. She will cook them all day so they soften enough for the baby's gums. You fetch the washpan and chip a little more ice from the bucket for washing. There is no soap left, only a gray lump the size of a walnut that must last the week. You will all share the same water, passing the pan from oldest to youngest until it is the color of weak coffee. Cleanliness is measured in degrees of not quite filthy. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the single window pane patched with cardboard. You pause and listen. Sometimes the wind sounds like a freight train, sometimes like a woman crying. Tonight it sounds like both. You wonder if your father found coal, if he is walking home yet, if he is warm enough. You do not say it aloud. Worry is another thing that costs warmth. Mother lights the kerosene lamp, just 1 wick turned low so the chimney blackens slowly. In its trembling circle of light, the room looks smaller, poorer, more loved than it has any right to be. You see the calendar on the wall still open to October, because no one can bear to tear off another month that brought no money. You see the Sears Roebuck catalog, used for everything from insulation to toilet paper. You see the family Bible with its cracked leather cover, and the flyleaf filled with births and deaths in your mother's careful schoolgirl hand. Your little sister pads over and leans against your leg. She is wearing your outgrown overalls cut down into a dress. She whispers too, says nothing, just slips her cold hand into yours. Together you stand in front of the stove and watch the orange eye of the fire grow. It is not much, but it is the only sun you will see today. Somewhere a rooster that cannot tell time crows once, hoarse and confused. The sky outside the window is still black, but a thin gray seam appears on the horizon like a promise someone else made. You feel the day beginning its slow lean toward you. There will be chores and hunger and small, necessary miracles performed with cracked hands and stubborn hearts. But for 1 more minute you stand still, sharing the tiny circle of heat with your mother and your sister, breathing in the smells of wood smoke and damp wool and human closeness, letting the stove's faint warmth seep into your bones the way grace sometimes seeps into a life that has forgotten how to ask for it. The fire pops. A spark jumps against the lid like a star falling upward. You close your eyes for just a second and feel the full, impossible weight of the day ahead, and the day after that, and the day after that. Then you open them again, because there is water to heat, beans to watch, a fire to tend, a family to keep alive on 1 thin dollar, and whatever scraps of hope the morning might bring. The sun is barely a pale smear above the cottonwoods when you step outside. The cold has teeth this morning. It bites through the 2 shirts, the threadbare sweater, and the flour sack jacket your mother cut down from your father's old coat. Frost glitters on every blade of dead grass like someone scattered salt across the yard. Your breath hangs in front of you in small, reluctant clouds that refuse to rise. In your pocket is the dollar. Not a crisp greenback, those disappeared years ago, but a folded, soft, grayish 1928 silver certificate your mother pressed into your hand after breakfast. It is the entire family fortune for the week. 8 people, 7 days, $1. The arithmetic is brutal, but you have done it so many times it lives behind your eyes like a second pulse. 8 mouths times 7 days equals 56 meals. 56 meals, $1 equals less than 2 cents per meal per person. You do not say the numbers aloud. Saying them makes them heavier. You start walking. The road to the Crossroads store is 3 miles of frozen ruts and red dust turned to brick by the cold. Your shoes, hand-me-down high tops with cardboard stuffed in the soles, slap the ground in a rhythm older than you are. left heel flapping, right toe leaking, but they are the only shoes you own, so you walk like someone balancing on a promise. Every farm you pass looks like yours. Sagging porch, missing shingles, a thin ribbon of smoke rising straight up because there is no wind yet. A neighbor's dog follows you for half a mile, then thinks better of it and turns back. Even dogs know when a journey is mostly hunger. You pass the Turner place. Their front door stands open because the frame warped and they have no nails left to fix it. Mrs. Turner is on her knees in the yard splitting kindling with a hatchet too big for her hands. She lifts a hand in greeting but does not smile. Smiling takes energy. At the 1 mile mark, you reach the dried-up creek bed where the willows grow. You veer off the road and check the rabbit gum you set 2 nights ago. Empty again. The bait, a withered apple core, is gone, but the twig trigger is untouched. Something smarter than you is eating better than you are. You reset the trap anyway, because hope is free and apples are not. Back on the road, you begin to meet others heading the same direction. Mr. Jenkins with his mule and sled, Mrs. Alvarez carrying a basket covered by a feed sack towel, the Crowley boys walking single file like ducks. No one speaks much. Words freeze on the tongue this early, but shoulders touch in passing, a small, silent language that says, I see you, I know, we are still here. The Crossroads store appears at the 2 mile mark, a squat wooden building with a tin rooster on the roof that no longer spins because the swivel rusted solid in 1930. A dozen wagons, mules, and ragged cars are already gathered. Smoke leaks from the stovepipe in a thin, apologetic stream. Inside, the air is thick with coal oil, coffee someone else is drinking, and the sweet-sour smell of sorghum barrels. The pot-bellied stove in the center glows cherry red, and every soul in the place is angled toward it like flowers toward a weak sun. Mr. Gideon, the storekeeper, stands behind the counter in sleeve garters and a look of permanent sorrow. He's not cruel. He's simply tired of being the man who says no. A hand-lettered sign above the cash register reads, Cash only no more credit, God bless you anyhow you join the slow line. People ahead of you lay their coins on the scard, counter the way gamblers lay down cards, carefully, prayerfully, already knowing they will lose. Mrs. Alvarez buys 2 ounces of Arbuckle's coffee and a penny's worth of bluing. Mr. Jenkins trades a setting of guinea eggs for a half-pound of soda crackers gone soft. The Crowley boys pool 37 cents for a dime's worth of rock candy to quiet a baby with the croup. When it is your turn, you step forward and unfold the dollar like it is made of butterfly wings. Mr. Gideon's eyes soften. He has 6 children of his own. You speak the list your mother made you memorize because paper is for important things and hunger is not important enough to waste paper on. 3 pounds pinto beans, 15 cents 5 pounds cornmeal, a half lb salt pork, 18 cents 1 lb lard, 10 cents 1 box matches, 5 cents a quarter lb soda, 5 cents 1 spool black thread 50, 5 cents total, 70 cents. You will have 30 cents left for emergencies, which is another word for next week. Mr. Gideon weighs everything on scales older than you are. The needle trembles but finally settles. He wraps the salt pork in newspaper. The front page still shows President Roosevelt smiling like a man who has never gone to bed hungry. You tuck the parcels inside your jacket, against your ribs where they will stay warmest. Mr. Gideon hesitates, then slips an extra nickel into your palm. For the young uns, he mutters, looking away. You swallow hard and whisper thank you because pride is expensive and you cannot afford it today. Outside again, the wind has come up. It slaps your cheeks raw as you start the long walk home. The parcels are heavier than they have any right to be. Gravity feels personal this morning. Halfway home, you stop at the Johnson place. Mrs. Johnson traded garden seed last spring and still has a few withered turnips in the ground. You offer to split stove wood for 2 hours in exchange for whatever she can spare. She agrees before you finish the sentence. You swing the axe until your palms blister through the holes in your gloves, stacking the wood neat as bricks while she digs frozen turnips with a broken hoe. 6 turnips small as fists, hard as stones. You wrap them in your cap and tuck them inside your shirt with the groceries. They are cold against your skin, but they are food, and food is love in a shape you can carry. The last mile home, you practice the speech you will give your mother. We got everything on the list, and 30 cents left, and 6 turnips besides. You practice it over and over so the worry will not leak out of your voice when you say it. You practice smiling with your mouth only, the way adults do when children are watching. When you push open the warped door, the house feels almost warm because the sun has climbed high enough to touch the south wall. Your mother is on her knees scrubbing the pine table with ashes and elbow grease. She looks up and sees the parcels and the turnips, and something flickers across her face too quickly to name. Relief, maybe, or grief wearing relief's clothes. She takes the bundles without a word, sets the salt pork on the highest shelf where the baby cannot reach it, and presses the 30 remaining cents into the Prince Albert tobacco can nailed inside the cupboard door. The can already holds 11 pennies and a 1921 mercury dime with a hole drilled in it. Riches. You hang your coat on its nail and roll up your sleeves. There is wood to split, water to haul, beans to sort for rocks and weevils. The day has barely begun, and already the dollar is gone, transformed into weight in your arms and the promise of supper. You feel the absence of it in your pocket like a missing tooth. You also feel something else, the faint, stubborn warmth of having brought home more than was expected. 6 turnips and 30 cents and a nickel someone else will never miss. It is not hope exactly. Hope is too grand a word for people who measure wealth in tablespoons. But it is motion. It is the next breath, the next meal, the next small defiance against a world that keeps trying to count you out. You pick up the axe again. The wood pile is low, but it is not empty yet. And as long as there is wood to split and beans to soak and a fire to tend, the day can still be won, one careful splinter at a time. You are back inside now, cheeks still stinging from wind and work. The parcels from the store sit on the table like small, hard-won planets orbiting the cracked oilcloth. But before any of them can become food, the stove must be persuaded to live again. In 1933, the cook stove is not an appliance. It is a family member with moods, opinions, and a stubborn streak wider than the Red River. Your mother calls it Old Satan, half affection, half curse. It is a home comfort range, cast iron, black as sin, with 6 lids on top, an oven the size of a shoebox, and a reservoir on the left side that has not held water since the lining rusted through in 1931. The nickel trim dulled to pewter years ago, and the nameplate is missing 2 letters, so it now reads Ho-E Comfort. Everyone pretends not to notice. The fire you coaxed at 4:30 a.m. has sulked down to a handful of sullen coals buried under gray ash. You kneel, knees on the same spot worn smooth by 10,000 other kneelings, and open the firebox door. A puff of stale heat breathes out, smelling of oak, corn cobs, and the ghost of last night's beans. You take the poker, a length of wagon tire your father straightened in 1928, and gently rake the coals forward. They glow a dull, resentful orange, like cats disturbed from sleep. First law of depression fire building, never waste a coal. Even a dead-looking one can be revived with patience, and blasphemy kept strictly internal. You lay 3 corn cobs in a careful teepee over the coals. Corn cobs are free. Every ear you shucked last fall left you 4 or 5 of them, and you saved them in gunny sacks under the porch like currency. They catch quickly, crackling and spitting tiny blue flames. While they burn, you fetch the kindling box. Inside are slivers of pine from a crate that once held California oranges, scraps of lath from when the chicken house fell down, and a few precious curls of fat lighted your father dug out of an old stump last summer. You choose the pine first. It burns fast and hot and will wake the coals up. You feed the fire the way you would a sick horse. Small bites, steady praise, no sudden moves. A twist of newspaper, the funny papers, because the ink burns cleaner, then pine slivers laid crosswise, then 3 thumb-sized pieces of oak. You blow through the lower draft until your lungs ache and your eyes water from smoke. The flames leap, lick, settle. The stove begins to tick as the iron expands. A sound like an outsider might mistake for breaking, but you know is the sound of waking up. Your mother appears beside you with the coffee pot. She sets it on the front lid where the heat is fiercest. Inside is water and the thrice-used grounds wrapped in a square of cheesecloth. She does not waste a drop. Every tablespoon is measured the way a jeweler measures diamonds. While the pot hisses, she lifts the reservoir lid and peers inside. Dry, of course. She shrugs, sets a small pot of beans on the back lid where the heat is gentler. They will simmer all day, taking on flavor from nothing but time and a rind of salt pork the size of a playing card. You slide the oven damper open a crack. Inside sits yesterday's cornbread, hard as a brick now, wrapped in a dish towel to keep the mice out. You will slice it thin, toast the slices on top of the stove, and call it breakfast. Waste is the only unforgivable sin in this house. Now comes the delicate part, banking the fire so it will last. You rake the coals to the back, lay 2 larger pieces of oak on top like sleeping lovers, then cover them with a half-inch deep in coal slack. The slack is dusty, full of rock, but it was free. Your father risked jail for every lump. You close the drafts until only a whisper of air sneaks in. The stove settles into a slow, steady heartbeat. If you have done it right, it will hold until noon. If you have done it wrong, the house will be stone cold by the time you come in from chores, and you will have to start over with matches that cost money. Your little brother brings in an armload of corn cobs and stacks them beside the stove with solemn pride. He is 6 and believes he is helping save the family. You ruffle his hair and pretend not to notice the holes in his mittens. Outside, the day is brightening to a thin, metallic blue. The cold feels sharper now that the sun is up. Sunlight in January is mostly decoration. You step onto the porch to split the next round of wood. The axe is dull, the handle loose, but it is the only axe you own. You set a round of oak on the chopping block, an old wagon wheel turned on its side and swing. The blade bites sticks. You work it free and swing again. Each impact sends a jolt up your arms into your shoulders, but the rhythm is comforting. Split, stack, split, stack. 20 sticks will see you to dinner. 40 will see you to bedtime. You split 60, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. When your arms are shaking, you carry the wood inside in 3 trips, stacking it neat against the wall where the heat can dry it a little. Your mother nods approval. She is slicing the cold cornbread with a butcher knife that has been sharpened so many times it is narrow as a file. She lays the slices on the stove lid. They hiss, curl, send up a smell that makes your stomach twist with want. Breakfast is ready. The family gathers, father back from the railroad with nothing but frozen ears and a cough, the baby in mother's arms, the older ones on the bench, the younger on laps. There is no butter, no milk, no syrup. There is toasted cornbread and weak coffee cut with roasted acorns. You each get 2 slices and half a cup of coffee. The baby gets the soft middle of 1 slice soaked in the coffee until it is mush. No one complains. Complaining is another luxury. While you eat, your mother plans the day aloud, soft enough the children will not understand the fear underneath. Beans on to soak now, cornbread again at noon with a little lard if the pork holds out. Supper will be beans and turnips and the last of the onions. If the hens lay, we'll have an egg apiece come Sunday. She says it the way other women might recite a psalm. It is a psalm, the psalm of beans and stubbornness. After breakfast, you tend the fire again. The oak has burned down to a bed of rose-red coals. You add 3 more pieces, careful, always careful. You have learned to read the stove's moods the way sailors read the sea. When the front lid glows cherry, it is happy. When it dulls to ash gray, it is sulking and will need coaxing. You talk to it sometimes, low, the way your grandmother talked to rising bread. Old Satan pretends not to listen, but the fire burns better when spoken to kindly. Mid-morning, you carry out ashes in the slop bucket. The ash is still warm. You spread it on the frozen garden spot where the early peas will go if spring ever comes. Wood ash sweetens the soil, your father says, though nothing has been sweet here in years. Back inside, you find your mother has moved the bean pot to the hottest lid. The salt pork rind floats on top like a tiny raft on a brown sea. She has added a whole onion, skin and all, for flavor. The smell begins to fill the house, earthy, smoky, promising. It is the best perfume in the world when your ribs are touching your backbone. You feed the stove again at noon, and again at 3, and again just before dusk. Each time the ritual is the same. Rake, blow, feed, adjust, pray silently. By late afternoon, the kitchen is almost warm enough that the baby stops crying, warm enough that your father can take off his coat for the first time in days. The windows sweat on the inside, a rare and precious fog. Supper is served at the table because the light is failing and the lamp oil must be saved. 8 bowls, 8 spoons carved from peach wood, 1 pot. The beans are thick, dark, almost creamy from slow cooking. The turnips have softened and taken on the pork's salt. There is cornbread left from breakfast, reheated and cut into wedges. You each get a cup of beans and half a turnip and 1 wedge of bread. No one speaks much. Eating is serious business. When the pot is scraped clean, your mother covers the 2 spoonfuls left with a saucer, tomorrow's breakfast starter. You wash the bowls in water heated on the stove. Dry them with a flour sack towel that has been washed so many times the printing is only a ghost. Purina chow. The dishes go back on their shelf in perfect rows, because order is the only thing you still control. Night comes early in January. By 5:30, the windows are black mirrors reflecting the lamp's small flame. You bank the fire one last time. Coals raked forward, 2 big chunks of oak, a blanket of slack on top, drafts nearly shut. If God and the wind are kind, it will hold until morning. If not, you will rise at 3 and do it all again in the dark. Your father winds the clock, and in Graham with no glass and 1 hand missing, and sets it for 4. Everyone climbs into bed wearing most of their clothes. The stove ticks itself to sleep, a slow metallic lullaby. You lie in the dark and listen to it cool, to the wind prowling the eaves, to the soft breathing of people who have eaten enough tonight to dream. The fire is small, but it is alive. And as long as it is alive, so are you. The sun is up now, a pale coin nailed to a pewter sky, but it gives no heat. You step off the porch with an empty tow sack over your shoulder and a rusty butcher knife in your belt. The garden that fed the family in 1928 is only a memory now. Rows of corn stunted by drought, tomato vines black with blight, bean poles lying like bleached bones. The soil blew away in black blizzards 2 springs ago and has not all come back. What remains is a patch of weary ground the color of coffee grounds, frozen solid 2 inches down. You could cry over it, but tears freeze too quickly to be worth the salt. So you go looking for the garden that still exists, the one nobody planted on purpose. First stop is the fence row along the south field. Cockleburs and ironweed stand knee-high, brittle as kindling. You kick through them and find what you are after, a scattered handful of lamb's quarter seeds still clinging to last summer's stalks. You strip them into your cap, careful not to lose a single black speck. Come April, these will be the first greens strong enough to push through cold dirt. Your mother will boil them with a little soda, and they will taste like spring trying to remember how to be brave. Next you follow the cow path to the creek that used to run. The creek bed is only a scar now, cracked mud and willow skeletons, but water still hides an inch below the surface if you know where to dig. You kneel and scrape with the knife until you hit damp sand. While you wait for a coffee can to fill you hunt the banks for watercress. There is none, the drought killed it 2 years ago, but you find a clump of wild garlic the size of your thumb. You pull it gently, roots and all, and the sharp green smell rises like a promise. Tonight's beans will taste like something besides despair. On the far side of the creek, the ground rises into a little bluff where the soil never baked as hard. Here the persimmon tree stands, leafless and patient. Most of the fruit fell and rotted in October, but a few shriveled persimmons still hang like brown lanterns. You knock them down with a long stick and gather 14. They are hard as rocks and puckered with cold, but your mother will slice them thin, dry them on the stove top, and they will sweeten the cornbread for a week. You wrap them in your handkerchief so the squirrels don't steal them on the way home. Walking the section line, you keep your eyes down, the way a miser counts coins. A clump of dead thistle yields a pocketful of downy fluff, good tinder, and if worst comes to worst, can stuff a hole in somebody's shoe. A blown-over cottonwood reveals a hollow full of last year's nuts the squirrels missed. You pry out 32 hickory nuts and a dozen black walnuts still in their green-black husks. The husks stain your fingers the color of old blood, but the meat inside is worth it. You will crack them tonight between 2 flat rocks and pick the nut meats out with a darning needle. 1 cup of nuts will stretch 3 pans of cornbread. Half a mile farther you reach the old Osborne place, abandoned since the bank took it in 31. The yard is waist-high in ragweed, but the rose hedge along the front walk is still alive. Rose hips cling to the canes like tiny red lanterns. You fill both pockets, stewed with a little sugar. If you ever get sugar again, they will keep scurvy away and give the baby something that almost tastes like dessert. On the way back, you check the rabbit gums again. This time the nearest one has sprung. Inside is a young cottontail, no bigger than your fist, trembling but unhurt. You whisper sorry the way your father taught you, then wring its neck quick and clean, and tuck it inside your coat against your heart to keep it from freezing solid before you get home. 1 rabbit will not feed 8 people, but the broth will flavor 2 pots of beans, and the meat will give your father strength for another day of walking the tracks. You detour past the gravel pit, where the county dumped tree trimmings last fall. Among the branches are chunks of elm and hackberry, too crooked for firewood, but perfect for smoking meat if you ever get meat again. You drag home an armload tied with baling twine. Your shoulders scream, but the cold has worked its way through every layer. But the bundle will keep the stove happy for 2 more days. Last stop is the ditch beside the mailbox. Someone's mail order catalog blew out of a trash fire months ago, and the wind pasted the pages against the barbed wire like prayer flags. You peel off 20 slick, colored pages, mostly underwear models smiling like they have never missed a meal. These will be twisted into fire starters tonight and used to coax tomorrow's flame from nothing. By the time the house comes into view again, your tow sack is heavy and your pockets bulge. You have been gone 3 hours and walked almost 7 miles. Your legs are numb past the knees, but you are carrying a garden no one can see. Seeds, greens, nuts, fruit, meat, and fuel. Every scrap earned by looking at the ground instead of the sky. Your mother meets you at the door. She does not ask if you found anything. The set of your shoulders tells her. She simply takes the sack and spreads the bounty on the table like a magician revealing cards. The children gather round, eyes wide. The rabbit is the star. Your little sister strokes its fur and names its supper before anyone can stop her. Mother smiles the smallest smile you have seen in weeks. While she cleans the rabbit, you sort the rose hips and persimmons into pie tins on the warming shelf. The wild garlic goes into tomorrow's beans. The nuts go into a fruit jar on the highest shelf where little hands cannot reach. The catalog pages are rolled tight and stored in the kindling box like cigars. You step back outside to split the new wood while it is still light enough to see the grain. The axe rises and falls, rises and falls. Each lick of the blade is a promise. We will not freeze tonight. We will not starve this week. We will not give the land the satisfaction of killing us. By dusk the woodbox is full to overflowing. The smell of rabbit stew is sneaking out the stovepipe, and the house feels almost rich. 8 people, 1 rabbit, a double handful of wild greens, and a sack of foraged hope. It is not enough, it is never enough, but it is something. And something in 1933 is a form of prayer. The sun is sliding toward the western cottonwoods now, bleeding thin orange light across the frozen yard. Inside the house, the single kerosene lamp is lit and turned low. Oil costs money and darkness is free. On top of old Satan, the big iron pots sit like patient priests. One full of pinto beans that have been simmering since dawn, one with the rabbit bones and wild garlic you brought home, and the small cast-iron spider skillet waiting for cornbread. These 3 things, beans, cornmeal, salt pork, are not just food. They are calendar, clock, and scripture. They tell you what day it is, how long until payday that will never come, and whether your people will still be breathing tomorrow. Your mother stands at the stove in her permanent posture, one hip against the warming closet, wooden spoon in hand, eyes on the pots the way a captain watches the horizon. She has not sat down since 4 this morning. Her apron is patched in 7 places and still bears the ghost of a flower advertisement from better days. She lifts the lid on the bean pot, and a cloud of steam rolls out carrying the smell of smoke, garlic, and stubborn hope. The beans are almost ready, dark, thick, and glossy, with a little fat the salt pork rind has surrendered. You are on cornbread duty tonight. Mother measured the ingredients earlier with the same cup she uses for everything. 1 heaping cup of cornmeal, a half teaspoon of soda sifted through her fingers, a pinch of salt saved from last week's ration, and water from the bucket you carried from the creek seep. No egg, the hens are sulking in this cold. No milk, the cow dried up last summer and was sold for $12 and a pregnant sow that later died. No shortening except the tablespoon of drippings skimmed from yesterday's beans and kept in a tin cup on the warming shelf. You mix it all in the same iron bowl that has served 3 generations. The batter is thin and grainy, the color of weak coffee. You pour it into the spider skillet already smoking hot with a teaspoon of precious lard. The sizzle is loud in the quiet room, almost violent. Is the sound of food becoming real? While the cornbread bakes, you help set the table. 8 mismatched plates, 3 with chips, 2 enamel, 3 tin, 8 spoons worn thin in the middle, 8 tin cups for water. No knives. Knives are for people who have meat to cut. The youngest children sit on peach crates because the bench only holds 5. Your father sharpens the butcher knife on the sandstone wheel, testing the edge with his thumb the way another man might test a gold coin. The rabbit has given its all. Mother lifts the carcass out with a forked stick and sets it on a platter to cool. There is not much meat, mostly backstrap and hind legs, but the broth is rich and dark, scented with wild garlic and the single onion you found sprouting in the root cellar. She ladles the broth over the beans, thinning them just enough to stretch farther. A few shards of carrot from the foraged turnips go in for color and the illusion of plenty. The cornbread comes out of the oven golden side of brown, crackling as it cools. You turn it onto a pie tin and its size, steam escaping like a secret. Mother slices it into 8 pieces that are never quite equal. The little ones get the softer middle. The workers get the crust that sticks to the ribs longer. She lays 1 thin slice of salt pork on each plate, fried crisp in its own fat, until the edges curl like burnt paper. That salt pork is the only thing standing between you and scurvy, between flavor and despair. It has to last 4 more days. Everyone sits. No one grabs. Your father bows his head and says the same grace he has said since you can remember, voice rough from cold dust and worry. Lord, make us thankful for these and all our many blessings. Forgive us our trespasses and help us bear the ones done against us. Amen. There is a moment of perfect stillness while the prayer settles. Then the quiet clink of spoons begins. You eat slowly because fast eating makes the food disappear too soon. The beans are smoky and soft, carrying the sharp bite of wild garlic and the deeper note of pork fat. The cornbread is coarse but hot, soaking up broth like a promise kept. The salt pork crackles between your teeth and tastes like every good thing you can no longer afford. Bacon, ham, Sunday dinner, childhood. You chew each bite 30 times the way your grandmother taught you, not for manners, but because chewing is free calories. Conversation is sparse. Your little brother asks if rabbits go to heaven. Mother says of course they do. Everything that suffers goes to heaven. Your older sister tells about seeing a coyote on the section line carrying a hen that wasn't even hers to steal. Father grunts that coyotes have young to feed same as folks. No one argues. Argument wastes breath. The plates are scraped clean. Mother brings out the surprise she has been hiding all day. 6 dried apple slices she saved from last fall's windfalls. She divides them carefully, 1/2 slice for each child, a whole slice each for the grown-ups who will pretend they are not hungry so the children can have more. The apples are leathery and tart, but they are fruit and fruit is almost myth. Your baby sister holds hers in both hands like a communion wafer and nibbles the edges, eyes closed in concentration. After supper comes the ritual of stretching. Mother pours the leftover beans. There are 2 cups tonight, a windfall into a stone crock and sets it on the back porch where the cold will keep it safe. Tomorrow they will become refried beans with a little lard and the last of the onion. The cornbread crumbs are swept into a saucer for breakfast toast. The salt pork rind is returned to its wax paper, folded smaller now, a promise shrinking but not yet broken. Even the dishwater is saved. It will water the dormant rose bush tomorrow and maybe coax one more bloom before spring. You wash dishes standing shoulder to shoulder with your older sister. The water is barely warm, gray with soapless suds, but your hands are grateful for the heat. She hums under her breath, an old hymn about gleaning in fields you have never seen. You join in on the chorus, voices low so you don't wake the baby. The song is about manna and ravens and God providing. You both know the ravens are late this year, but singing keeps the dark from getting too close. When the kitchen is clean, your father takes the Bible down from its nail. He reads by lamplight, voice steady and slow, the story of Joseph storing grain in Egypt. The children lean forward, half asleep, dreaming of barns so full the doors won't shut. You listen and try not to think about how Joseph had power and brothers who sold him and a Pharaoh who listened. Here there is only dust and pride, and a government man who came last summer and wrote numbers in a notebook and never came back. Bedtime is layers and strategy. The stove is banked for the night, drafts closed, a final chunk of hackberry laid like a sleeping dog across the coals. You crawl under quilts made from overalls and feed sacks, bodies pressed close for warmth. Your little brother's feet find the small of your back and stay there, ice blocks slowly thawing. You listen to the house settle, to the wind prowling for cracks, to the soft breathing of people who have eaten enough tonight to dream. Before sleep takes you, you do the arithmetic again in your head. 3 pounds of beans minus tonight's supper equals 1¼ pounds left. 5 pounds of cornmeal minus 2 cups equals 4½. Half pound salt pork minus 8 paper-thin slices equals 6 ounces and a rind. 6 turnips, 30 cents, 1 rabbit in the stew pot of memory. It is not enough. It is never enough. But the beans were hot and the cornbread was crisp at the edges, and for 1 hour the house smelled like a home, instead of a waiting room for worse news. You close your eyes. In the dark behind your lids you see tomorrow's meals already forming. Bean cakes fried in lard for breakfast, cornbread and sorghum for dinner if the sorghum lasts, bean and rabbit broth soup for supper thickened with the last of the turnips. 3 meals, 8 mouths, 1 stove, 1 mother's stubborn love, 1 day at a time. Outside the wind howls like it wants to come in and finish what the bank started. Inside, the stove ticks itself toward morning, guarding its small red heart against the cold. You pull the quilt higher and let the rhythm of 8 sleeping bodies carry you under. Beans, cornmeal, salt pork, not a feast, not even close. Tonight they are a cord stronger than rope, binding you all to one another, and to the thin, fierce hope that tomorrow there will be enough left to do it again. It is still full dark when your mother shakes you awake. The stove has held. There is a faint red glow behind the lids, but the room is colder than a grave. Today is relief day. Once a month the government truck comes to the schoolhouse 6 miles away with surplus food for families who have filled out the forms and swallowed their names. Your mother has been saving the strength for this walk since the last truck, 3 weeks ago. You dress in silence, Two pairs of socks with the heels darned in crooked X's, overalls stiff with yesterday's sweat frozen overnight, the flour sack jacket, and your father's old felt hat pulled down to your eyebrows. Mother wraps the baby in every quilt the house owns and ties her on with a shawl so only the tip of her nose shows. Father stays behind to tend the fire and the pigs. Someone has to keep the place from freezing solid. The rest of you, mother, you, the three middle children, and the baby step out into a morning sharp enough to cut wire. The sky is clear and cruel, stars like nail heads hammered into black tin. Frost crunches underfoot with every step. You carry an empty tow sack folded small, and the yellow registration card your mother guards like a deed to land she no longer owns. The card is creased and soft, the ink faded from being handled too many times. It lists 8 names, 8 ages, 8 mouths that have not eaten meat except rabbit in 91 days. The road is already busy with ghosts. Families walk in single file, heads down, breath pluming white. Some push handcarts, some carry bobbies, some drag sleds made from car hoods. No one speaks above a whisper. Talking uses calories. At the 2-mile mark, you pass the Hooverville shacks along the railroad embankment. Tin and tar paper lean-tos lit from within by candle stubs. A woman stands in a man's overcoat, nods at your mother. They shared a birthing bed once and now share hunger. Your mother nods back, a whole conversation in the tilt of a chin. By the time the schoolhouse comes into view, the sky has gone from black to iron gray. At least 200 people are already stand in line, a slow-moving serpent of patched coats and desperate eyes. Truck, an olive drab Rio with government plates, sits under the basketball goal, back doors yawning open. 2 men in city overcoats and fedoras hand out sacks, while a third sits at a folding table with a clipboard and the weary authority of someone who has said, "Next," 10,000 times. You join the tail of the line between the Martinez family and old Mrs. Duggan, who is 80 if she is a day, and still walks 6 miles for 12 pounds of flour. The baby begins to cry, a thin and sharp. Mother shifts her higher, humming the lullaby that has no words left, only breath. The line moves by inches. Every few minutes the man with the clipboard barks a name, and someone steps forward to be measured against an invisible yardstick of need. You watch the ritual the way you once watched baptism, half hope, half terror. When the sun finally clears the horizon, it is a white disk that gives light but no warmth. Your toes have gone past pain into a dull wooden ache. The baby has cried herself to sleep. Your little brother leans against your leg like a sack of corn slowly settling. An hour crawls by, then 2. Frost forms on eyelashes. A man ahead of you faints and is carried to the side. No one panics. Fainting is common. Someone passes a tin cup of water down the line. It makes 3 trips and comes back empty each time. Finally, your mother's name is called. She steps forward, chin high, the way she once walked into church when the banker sat in her pew. The clipboard man looks at the yellow card, then at the baby, then at the 5 children strung out behind like ducklings. He writes something, tears off a stub, hands it over without meeting her eyes. You are waved to the truck. The relief workers move like men handling dynamite. 1 sack of flour, 12 pounds, bleached white as wedding cake. 1 dented tin of yellow cornmeal, 5 pounds. 1 rectangular block of surplus cheese the color of candle wax, 2 pounds. 1 can of evaporated milk with a rusty lid. And miracle of miracles, 1 small burlap bag of navy beans someone mislabeled and cannot sell in stores. Total weight, maybe 28 pounds. A month's grace in 4 parcels. Your mother signs the receipt with an X because the pen is frozen and her fingers will not close properly. The man does not smile, but he does slide an extra can of milk across the tailgate when no one is looking. Mother tucks it inside her coat like contraband. The walk home is harder than the walk there. The flour sack rides your shoulder like a fat child. Your mother carries the cornmeal and cheese balanced on her hip with the baby. The middle children take turns with the small bag of navy beans as though it is a football made of gold. No one complains. Complaining is for people who have the strength left to waste. Halfway home, you meet your father walking out to meet you. He has the mule and the sled made from an old Ford running board. Wordlessly, he takes the flour from your back. The relief is so sudden your shoulder keeps expecting the weight for another 100 yards. When you reach the house, the sun is high and merciless, turning the frost to glittering dust. Inside, the fire has held. Father banked it perfectly. The room feels almost tropical after 6 hours in the wind. Mother lays the bounty on the table like a magician who has pulled an entire Thanksgiving out of thin air. The children touch the white flour sack with reverent fingers. No one has seen flour this white since 1929. The evaporated milk can is set on the highest shelf like a crown. There will be biscuits tomorrow, real biscuits, not just cornbread. There will be milk for the baby thinned with water and a pinch of sorghum. There will be cheese melted over beans until it stretches like dreams you almost remember having. Your mother does something then you have not seen in months. She laughs. It is small and rusty, but it is a laugh. She pulls the extra can of milk from her coat and sets it beside the first one. 2 cans. 60 days of milk for a baby who has never known what it is to be full. Father clears his throat, looks at the floor, mutters something about the Lord moving in mysterious ways, even when the ways include Republicans and surplus cheese. Everyone pretends not to notice the water standing in his eyes. You hang your coat and feel the absence of the yellow card in the pocket. Next month there will be another line, another 6-mile walk, another clipboard man who cannot look at you. But for now the table is covered with government flour and navy beans, and a block of cheese big enough to make 8 people believe, just for one afternoon, that tomorrow might not be worse than today. Mother is already figuring, out loud, soft, the way some women pray. 12 pounds of flour is 96 biscuits or 48 loaves if we mix it half with cornmeal. 5 pounds cornmeal is another 20 pans of cornbread. 2 pounds cheese is cheese toast for a month if we slice it thin as communion wafers. She trails off, smiling at numbers the way other people smile at bobbies. You feed the stove until it roars. Today fuel can be spared for celebration. The house fills with the smell of warming flour sacks and the faint, impossible scent of plenty. Outside the wind still howls, the dust still blows, the bank still owns the land under your feet. But inside, for $1 thin and 6 frozen miles have bought something rarer than gold. A single day when no one has to measure love in spoonfuls of lard. And in 1933, that is almost the same thing as a miracle. It is late afternoon now, the short winter day already bleeding out at the edges. The relief flour sits on the table like a white monument. But monuments do not feed children, so your mother rolls up her sleeves and begins the quiet alchemy. First, she sets aside 2 cups of the new white flour in a smaller bowl. Tomorrow's biscuits, a promise kept for breakfast. The rest she pours into the big stone crock that has not been this full since the year you were born. She covers it with a pie tin and whispers, "Stay there, little darlings, and grow for us." Tonight's supper will be built on the bones of yesterday's rabbit and the new government cheese. Mother calls it depression stew, half joke, half prayer. She starts by slicing the block of surplus cheese into 8 paper-thin slabs, so thin you can almost see through them. 4 slabs go back into the wax paper for another day. The other 4 she sets on a tin plate near the stove to soften. Next, she lifts the crock of leftover pinto beans from the porch, 2 cups, cold and congealed, but still fragrant. She scrapes them into the biggest pot, adds the rabbit carcass picked clean at noon, the wild garlic tops, the last 2 turnips diced small, and a quart of water from the bucket. She sets the pot on the hottest lid and lets it come to a slow boil while she turns her attention to the cornbread. Tonight the cornbread will be different. Tonight there is milk, evaporated milk, thinned half and half with water, but milk all the same. Tonight there is cheese. She mixes the usual cornmeal and soda and salt, then beats in a cup of the precious milk and one of the softened cheese slabs crumbled fine. The batter is richer than anything this stove has seen in years. She pours it into the spider skillet, already greased with a teaspoon of the morning's bacon drippings. The sizzle is louder, happier. The smell that rises is almost violent in its kindness. While the cornbread bakes, she fries the remaining 4 cheese slabs in the same skillet she used for the salt pork slices at breakfast. The cheese bubbles and browns, turning crisp at the edges. She flips each piece with a fork, and the kitchen fills with a smell that makes the baby wake up laughing in her sleep. Father comes in from the barn carrying a surprise. 3 eggs the Rhode Island Red hid under the hay manger and forgot about. They are small and freckled and perfect. Mother looks at them the way some women look at diamonds. She sets 2 aside for breakfast and cracks the 3rd into the stew, stirring until the yolk disappears into gold threads. The stew thickens, turns the color of river clay after rain. The table is set with the same chipped plates, but tonight there is a tablecloth, an old bedsheet bleached almost white and pressed with a sad iron heated on the stove. It is the first time the cloth has been used since your grandmother's funeral. Mother says cloth makes food taste better even when there is little of it. You are sent to the porch to fetch the sorghum jug. There is barely a cup left, blackstrap thick as axle grease, but it is sugar is sugar. She will dole it out by the teaspoon so every child can have the memory of sweet on the tongue. The cornbread comes out of the oven puffed and golden, freckled with melted cheese. Mother turns it onto the wooden bread board and it sighs again, steam curling like incense. She cuts it into 8 pieces that are almost equal. Tonight almost is enough. The stew is ladled into bowls thick enough to stand a spoon, fragrant with rabbit and garlic and the faint, impossible luxury of cheese. Each bowl gets 1 wedge of cornbread and 1 crisp cheese slice on the side. The sorghum is passed hand to hand. Each person dips the tip of their spoon and touches it to their tongue like communion. Father says grace again, but tonight his voice cracks on the word thankful. No one mentions it. You eat in the same slow, reverent rhythm as always, but tonight the silence feels different, full instead of empty. The stew is rich and smoky, the cornbread tender with milk and cheese, the sorghum a dark miracle on the back of the tongue. Your little sister closes her eyes and chews as though storing the taste for winter. The baby gums a softened corner of cornbread and makes a sound that is almost laughter. When the bowls are empty, mother does not scrape them clean for the dog. There is no dog anymore. Instead, she adds a cup of water to the stew pot and sets it back on the stove. Tomorrow at noon, the thinned broth will become soup with a handful of cornmeal stirred in. The cornbread crumbs are swept into a saucer and covered with a cup towel. Tomorrow evening, they will be soaked in the last of the milk and fried into mush. Supper has become 3 meals before the dishes are even washed. After eating, the family gathers around the stove. Father reads from the almanac, instead of the Bible tonight, predictions about rain that will not come, frost dates that no longer matter, but the sound of his voice is steadying. Mother mends a tear in your brother's overalls. Stitching by the light of the stove throws upward onto her face. The baby nurses and falls asleep against her breast. The room is warm enough that coats come off and are folded neatly on chair backs. You sit on the floor with your back against the warm stove and feel the food settle inside you like ballast in a storm-tossed boat. For the first time in months, your stomach is not clawing at your backbone. You are not full. No one is foolish enough to believe in full anymore. But you are quiet inside, the way the world feels after a hard rain when the dust finally lies down. Mother notices. She reaches over and smooths your hair once, a gesture so quick you might have dreamed it. Then she goes back to her mending, humming under her breath. Later, when the lamp is turned low and the children are tucked in wearing most of their clothes, you help bank the fire for the night. The stove is happy, full of oak and corn cobs and the memory of cheese. It will hold until morning. You add 1 last chunk of hackberry and close the drafts until the lids glow a steady, satisfied red. Before you climb into bed, you stand at the window and look out at the yard silvered with moonlight. The relief truck is long gone, the line dispersed back into the dark like smoke. But the flour sack is real, the cheese is real, the extra can of milk is real. And tonight 8 people went to bed without the knife of hunger twisting in their guts. You whisper thank you to no one in particular, to the truck driver, to the clipboard man who slipped the extra can, to the stubborn red hen, to your mother who can make 1 meal into 3, to the stove that held its fire, to the God who sometimes remembers the poor when the government does not. Then you crawl under the quilts and press your cold feet against your little brother's warm back. He does not even flinch. He is already dreaming of biscuits. Outside, the wind still prowls. The dust still waits for spring. The bank still owns tomorrow. But tonight's supper stretched far enough to cover breakfast and lunch and the edges of supper again. Tonight 8 hearts beat a little slower, a little surer. Tonight the house smells of cheese and cornbread and something dangerously close to peace. And in the hardest year of the hardest decade of the hardest century most of them would ever know, that was enough to keep the dark from winning for 1 more day. The last red eye of the stove has dimmed to a dull rose when the house finally grows quiet. The wind still prowls the eaves like a hungry dog, but inside the room has settled into the small, stubborn warmth that 8 bodies and 1 carefully banked fire can make. The kerosene lamp is turned so low the flame is only a blue heartbeat in the glass chimney. Shadows stretch long across the newspapered walls, making the tiny room feel larger and lonelier at the same time. Your mother sits on the nail keg by the stove, the only chair with all 4 legs still intact. In her lap is a pair of your father's overalls with the seat worn clean through. She is patching them with a piece cut from an old sugar sack, stitching by feel more than sight. Each pull of the needle is slow, deliberate, the way people move when they know they have to make 20 stitches last a month. Thread is black, 50 from the store this morning, and she is using every inch of the 5-cent spool like it is the last thread on earth. Father sits opposite her on the wood box, whittling a new handle for the broken axe. The old one snapped yesterday while splitting frozen elm. He works with a pocket knife that has not closed properly since 1927, shaving curls of oak so thin they are almost transparent. The shavings fall into a tin can at his feet. Tomorrow they will be fire starter. Nothing is wasted, not even waste. The children are in bed but not asleep. They lie still under the quilts, listening the way children do when they know the grown-ups are deciding whether tomorrow will be worse than today. The baby has finally stopped nursing and breathes soft against mother's neck, tiny fists curled like rosebuds. Mother rocks without thinking, the same rhythm she has used since the first child came in 1919. You sit on the floor between them, knees drawn up, back against the warm stove. Your job tonight is to keep the fire alive without wasting wood. Every 15 minutes you open the door a crack, slide in one corncob or one careful stick, and close it again before the heat can escape. You have learned to read the stoves breathing the way sailors read the sea. When it sighs, it is content. When it growls, it is hungry. Tonight it is almost purring. Father speaks first, voice low so the children will not catch the fear under the words. Flour will last 6 weeks if we mix it half and half with cornmeal. Cheese maybe 3. Beans from the truck'll carry us to March if the weather holds and the mule don't founder. Mother nods without looking up from her stitching. Got 2 cans of milk. That's 60 days for the baby if we thin it careful. Sorghum's near gone, but the persimmons you brought will sweeten mush. Rose hips'll keep scurvy off till May. They talk the way farmers talk about rain, half calculation, half prayer. Numbers are spoken softly, the way some people speak the names of the dead. You add your own quiet report. Found a patch of lamb's quarter seed by the south fence, enough to plant 2 rows come April, and the rabbit gums are still set. Might be another rabbit by Sunday. Father grunts approval. Mother's needle pauses for the space of 1 heartbeat, then keeps moving. There is a long silence filled only by the tick of cooling iron and the soft rasp of knife on wood. Then Mother says the thing no one has said aloud yet. Bank letter came yesterday. Final notice. 60 days. The words fall into the room like a stone dropped down a well. You feel them hit bottom somewhere behind your ribs. Father does not look up from his whittling. 60 days is 2 more relief trucks, 2 more plantings if the seed corn holds. 60 days is time. Mother's voice is softer still. Neighbor Jenkins is pulling out come spring, headed to California, says the fruit picking pays 50 cents a day and they don't ask if you own the dirt under your feet. Father's knife stops. The curl of oak in his fingers trembles. I was born on this place, he says. My daddy died on this place. Ain't leaving it for the bank to sell to some insurance company in Chicago. Mother does not argue. She simply ties off the thread with her teeth, bites it clean, and starts a new patch on the knee. The needle flashes once, twice in the lamplight. You feel the weight of the house around you. The sagging roof, the cracked window panes, the floorboards worn smooth by generations of bare feet. This is not just land. It is memory wearing overalls. The baby stirs and whimpers. Mother shifts her to the other side and begins to hum, the same 3 notes over and over, a lullaby with no words left. The tune is older than any of you. It was sung to your father when he had whooping cough, to your mother when her own mother died in the influenza. It is the sound of staying. Father sets the finished axe handle aside and pulls a small tin box from his shirt pocket. Inside are 4 Prince Albert cigarette papers and a pinch of Bull Durham tobacco he has been saving since Christmas. He rolls 1 cigarette with fingers that shake only a little, lights it from a stove lid, and draws the smoke deep. The smell is sharp and sweet and gone too quickly. He offers the cigarette to Mother. She takes 1 drag, hands it back. They share the smoke the way they share everything else, carefully, completely, without waste. You watch the coal of the cigarette glow and fade, glow and fade. It is the only light in the room now except the stove. Father speaks again, softer. Remember the year the corn made 100 bushel to the acre? We had 2 hogs fat enough to sell and money in the bank for the first time ever. You bought that blue dress with the white collar. Mother smiles in the dark. You can hear it more than see it. Wore it to the box supper at the school. You bid $3 on my basket just to keep Otis Wheeler from getting it. They laugh, 2 small puffs of sound that disappear into the cold like smoke. The children are asleep now, breathing slow and even. You can feel the house breathing with them. Mother finishes the patch, folds the overalls, and sets them on the chair for morning. She stands, bones popping, and moves to the table where the relief flour waits. She runs her hand across the sack the way a blind woman reads a face. Then she does something you have not seen in years. She measures out 2 cups of the white flour into a bowl, adds a pinch of salt, and covers it with a damp dish towel. For morning, she says, biscuits, real ones. The word biscuits hangs in the air like church bells. Father stubs out the last of the cigarette in a coffee can lid and banks the fire one final time. He adds the new axe handle's shavings, a corncob, and 1 small chunk of coal slack. The stove accepts the offering with a soft whoosh and settles into its nighttime rhythm. You all move toward bed without speaking. Coats are folded for pillows, shoes lined up under the bed frame like soldiers waiting for orders. Mother lays the baby in the apple crate cradle and covers her with the best quilt, the one with the wedding ring pattern pieced from dresses worn by women who never imagined their grandbabies would sleep under them in a house with no glass in the windows. You crawl in last, sliding between your brothers, feeling their small warm bodies curl toward you like commas in a sentence that refuses to end. The quilt's smell of wood smoke and baby milk, and the faint, impossible sweetness of tomorrow's biscuits. Father turns the lamp wick down to nothing. The room goes dark except for the thin red line around the stove lids, a promise glowing in the black. In the darkness, Mother's voice floats across the room, soft as corn silk. We made it through today, she says. That's one more than they thought we would. Father's answer is a low rumble you feel in your chest more than here. And we'll make it through tomorrow, one day at a time, same as always. You lie still and listen to the house settle around you, the wind worrying the tin roof, the stove ticking itself toward morning, 8 hearts beating slow and steady under patched quilts. Outside, the bank owns the land and the dust owns the sky and the government owns the flour. But in here tonight, 8 people own one another, and that is a kind of wealth no ledger can touch. You think of the biscuits rising under the damp towel, of the cheese waiting in its wax paper, of beans sleeping in their crock. You think of the yellow card that will take you back to the relief line in 29 days. You think of the axe handle your father carved smooth with his own hands, ready for whatever wood tomorrow brings. None of it is enough. It never is. But tonight the house is warm, the baby is quiet, and tomorrow there will be biscuits. You close your eyes and let the small, fierce hope settle in your chest like a bird coming home to roost. Somewhere in the dark your mother begins to hum again, the same 3 notes older than sorrow. The stove answers with a soft pop, as if to say amen, and under quilts made of rags and memory, 8 people slip towards sleep believing, for one more night that morning will come, and that they will be here to meet it. The first thing you notice is the smell. Before your eyes open, before the cold bites your nose, before the baby whimpers or the rooster that survived the soup pot scratches at the door, you smell biscuits. Real ones, not cornbread pretending to be biscuits, not soda crackers soaked in bacon grease and called a treat, but honest-to-God risen flour biscuits, light as hope and twice as fragile. You lie still for 1 heartbeat longer, afraid to breathe too deep and break the spell. Then the stove door clanks softly, and you know it is real. Your mother has been up since 3, feeding the fire 1 precious stick at a time, nursing it the way she nursed every one of you through croup and hunger and nights when the wind tried to steal your names off tombstones. She is rolling the dough on the oilcloth with a Coke bottle, because the rolling pin went for scrap iron in 31. Her hands move in small, certain circles, the same circles her mother used, and her mother before her, back to women who crossed oceans with nothing but yeast starter in a crock and the promise that bread would rise if you believed hard enough. You slip out from under the quilts without waking your brothers. The floorboards are ice, but you know which ones sing and which ones stay silent. You pad to the stove and stand behind her, close enough to feel the heat on your shins but not close enough to steal it from the oven. She does not turn, but she knows you are there. 12, she says quietly. 12 perfect biscuits, 1.5 apiece, and nobody has to share with the dog. There is no dog anymore, but the joke lands soft and warm. Father is already outside. You hear the rhythmic thunk of the new axe handle biting frozen wood. He is singing under his breath, an old hymn about gleaning wheat and leaving the corners of the field for the poor. His voice is cracked and off-key, but it is the most beautiful sound in the world, because it means he woke up believing today was worth splitting wood for. You open the stove door a crack and peek. The biscuits are golden domes, split and steaming, crowded together like they are afraid to be alone. The smell is butterless, milk-poor, sugarless, but it is the smell of Sunday morning in a time when Sunday was still a country you could visit. Mother lifts the pan with a dish towel, folded 4 times, and sets it on the warming shelf. She has melted the last tablespoon of lard in the spider and brushed the tops so they shine like church shoes. Then she does something that makes your throat close. She breaks one biscuit open, lets the steam roll out, and lays a paper-thin slice of the government cheese inside. She wraps it in a clean rag and hands it to you. For your father, she says. Before the man splits wood, he eats first. You carry the warm bundle outside. The sky is the color of fresh cream, just beginning blush rose in the east. Frost feathers every blade of grass, every fence wire, every breath you take. Father leans on the axe handle, sweat already frozen in his eyebrows. You hand him the biscuit without a word. He takes it like it is communion, bites, closes his eyes. Lord have mercy, he whispers. Tastes like 1926. He eats half and wraps the rest in the rag for later, because that is what fathers do. Back inside the house is awake now. Children tumble out of bed in a tangle of quilts and wonder. The baby is propped in the apple crate, kicking her feet at the smell. Mother pours the last of the evaporated milk into a pitcher, thins it with water, adds a spoon of sorghum, and stirs until it is the color of weak coffee with cream. It is not real milk, but it is the closest thing any of these children have tasted in 2 years. She sets the table with the almost white sheet again. The chipped plates look proud today. Each person gets one whole biscuit and half of another, split and buttered with a scraping of lard whipped with salt until it pretends to be butter. The cheese biscuit halves are passed down the line like sacramental wafers. You sit and wait for grace. Father comes in wiping his hands on his overalls, face red from cold and something that might be joy. He bows his head. Lord, he says, voice rough with smoke and gratitude, we ain't got much, but we got this. Thank you for hands to work and hearts to hold on. Thank you for flower that rises and children that sleep through the night. Help us be worthy of the next sunrise. Amen. 8 spoons lift 8 cups of pale coffee milk. 8 mouths open for the first bite of biscuit so tender it falls apart on the tongue. There is no talking for a long time. There is only the small, perfect sounds of eating something that almost tastes like plenty. When the plates are clean, Mother scrapes the crumbs into her palm and feeds them to the baby one by one. Then she stands at the door and looks out across the yard where the frost is beginning to burn off in the climbing sun. Ground still froze, she says, but it won't be forever. 60 days, the man said. 60 days is long enough plant peas if the seed holds. Long enough mend the harness. Long enough teach this baby to walk and that boy to read and this girl to stitch a straight seam. She turns back to the room, eyes bright in the thin light. 60 days is long enough live. Father picks up the new axe handle, tests its balance, nods once. You feel it then, the thing no bank notice can touch, no dust storm can bury, no clipboard man can measure. It is not hope exactly. Hope is too clean a word for people who have buried bobbies and burned furniture to stay warm. It is something older, tougher, quieter. It is continuance. The biscuit is gone, the coffee cup empty, the fire burning low but steady. Outside, the wind has dropped and the sky is turning the color of warm bread. Inside, 8 people move through the small morning chores that make a life. Sweeping, feeding the stove, dressing the baby, sharpening the hoe, planning the garden that will grow or fail on land the bank already owns on paper. None of it is certain. None of it is safe. But all of it is ordinary and therefore holy. You step onto the porch with your father. The sun is clear of the horizon now, laying long golden bars across the frozen furrows. Somewhere a meadowlark tries a spring song and thinks better of it, but the trying was enough. Father rests a hand on your shoulder, heavy and warm. 60 days, he says again, softer. You nod. 60 days to plant. 60 days to mend. 60 days to love one another hard enough to make it worth the staying. You look out across the fields that have tried to kill you and failed again. The dirt is still there, cracked and waiting. The sky is still there, wide and merciless and beautiful. The people are still here, thin and stubborn and breathing. You take one step off the porch, then another. The frost crunches under your broken shoes like sugar. Behind you, the screen door, your mother is singing the 3-note lullaby, but slower now, almost like a marching song. The day begins. One careful, impossible, biscuit-scented dawn at a time. And in the hardest year anyone can remember, 8 people walk into it together, carrying nothing but patched clothes, government flour, and the quiet, unbreakable knowledge that they have already outlasted yesterday. That is all any of them need to outlast tomorrow.